In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at some common factoring, and we're going to check all 10 solutions. There are 10 examples here. We're going to check every one. I'm going to show you how to do that. So the directions are factor each of the following, and this is all common factoring. There's lots of other kinds of factoring, but this is just common factoring here. So a common factor is a number or a monomial, actually it can be bigger too, but that's the only case here, that is common, divides evenly into all of the terms, whether it's a binomial or trinomial. So the first one here, 6x minus 18, and we want the largest number. So for example, 2 divides into both of those numbers evenly, but it's not the biggest number that does. 6 goes into both of those evenly. So we can divide, well, I guess, 3 would as well, I suppose. So 6 is the largest number that divides into both of these. So 6 is called the common factor. So we write a 6 out here. And the common, well, actually any factored form, if we expand out what we're going to get here, we should end up with the 6x minus 18. That's how we're going to do the check. So to figure out what goes in here, you take this original expression and divide it, all the terms, by that common factor, the 6 that we're dividing out, or factoring out. So 6x minus 18 is going to get divided by this 6. That's the 6 right there in the denominator. So 6x divided by 6, those 6's would divide to give you a 1 here. So this is just going to be a 1x. So we put an x here. And then on the end, when we divide negative 18 by 6, we get minus 3. So it'd be minus 3 here. We close the brackets. And so that's the common factored form. So to check it, we expand this out and we should end up with 6x minus 18. So this is my 6x minus 3 brackets. So 6 times x would be 6x. 6 times the negative 3 is minus 18. This is exactly the same as what we started with, so that factoring should be correct. For number 2 here, 8x squared plus 12x. So again, you want the largest number that's going to divide into all these terms. So 2 goes into 8 and 12, but it's not the biggest number that does. 4 goes into both these numbers. Now, they also both have powers of x. There's an x to the first here. Remember, if you don't see an exponent, it's automatically 1, and x squared. You can always factor out the lowest of the common powers of x. So there's only an x to the first here, so I can only factor a 4x out. I can't get an x squared out because there's only x squared would mean there's 2 of them being factored out, but there's only 1 here to divide out, so I can only factor x to the first out. So when they have the powers of the same base, the same variable, it's the lowest of all those common powers. 1 being the lowest, that's why it's 4x to the first for factoring out. So to get what's in here, we divide this, 8x squared plus 12x, by this common factor of 4x. So here, 8 divided by 4 is 2. And remember, there's a 1 here. When we divide x squared by x to the first, you subtract the exponents. So 2 minus this 1 would be a 1 for the exponent on the x here. So again, 8 divided by 4 is 2. X squared divided by x is x. So we put a 2x right here. On the end here, when we divide the 12x by 4x, 12 divided by 4 is 3. And there's no x's left because x divided by x, it's the same power of x. That will give you an x to the power of 0, which means there's no x's. And so it's just a plus 3 on the end, and we close the brackets. So this is the factored form. And we can check it by expanding this out, 4x times 2x plus 3, and we should get the original expression. So 4x times 2x is 8x squared. 4 times 2 is 8. X times x is x squared. Remember, you add the exponents, so 1 and 1 here adds the 2. And now, so 4x times the 3 is 12x. 4 times 3 is 12. There's a single x in that product, so it's going to be 12x. Again, this is exactly the same as the original expression, so that factored form must be correct. For question number 3, 5m squared minus 40m. So there's a 5 divides into both of these evenly, and it's the biggest number, the only other number besides 1, I suppose. So the common factor has a 5, and they both have powers of m. Again, m to the first, m squared, so the lowest common power is an m. So we can factor a 5m out. And so we get what's in here by dividing 5m squared minus 40m by this common factor of 5m. So 5m squared divided by 5m. The 5's divide out to give you a 1 here, and m squared divided by m to the first. We subtract the exponents, so 2 minus 1 will give you just an m to the first power, so we put an m here. And then 40m divided by 5m. See, 5 goes into 40 8 times, and the m's divide out. M to the first divided by m to the first would be m to the power 0, which means no m's, so this is just a minus 8. So minus 8 in the end, we close the brackets, so there's the factored form. So we check it by expanding this out. So 5m, m minus 8. 5m times m would be 5m squared, and 5m times negative 8 would be minus 40m. And again, this is exactly the same as what we have over here. So the factoring should be correct. In question number 4 up here, there's now when the expression you're factoring starts with a negative, it's a good idea to always factor out a negative common factor. So there's a negative 2 at the beginning here. So we have coefficients of negative 2, 10, and negative 18. So negative 2 would divide into all those. This is the largest number. We could factor a 2 out, but it's common practice if there's a negative at the beginning to factor a negative out. So we'll factor a negative 2 out. And they all have powers of x. Again, the lowest power of x is to the first power. There's an x squared, x cubed here. So we can factor a negative 2x out. So we get what's in here by dividing this by negative 2x. So at the beginning, negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1. So there's going to be a coefficient of 1 here. And x cubed divided by x will be x squared. So we put an x squared right here. To get what is after the x squared, we divide negative 2x, the common factor, into the 10x squared here. So 10 divided by negative 2 is negative 5. And it'll be just x, because x squared divided by x is an x. Remember, 2 minus, there's a 1 here, is a 1, so it's minus 5x to the first. So put a negative 5x here. And on the end, negative 18 divided by negative 2 is plus 9. The x's divide out because x divided by x is x to the power 0, no x's, so we put a plus 9 in the end and close brackets. So that's the factored form. We check it by expanding this out. So, and we should get our original expression. So negative 2x times x squared would be negative 2, and it'd be x cubed because 1 and 2 add to 3 for the exponent, the x's. Negative 2x times negative 5x would be a plus 10x squared. Negative 2 times negative 5 is 10. X times x is x squared. And negative 2x times 9 is minus 18x. Notice that this is exactly the same as what we started with. Number 5, k squared plus 4k. This is just about the smallest common factor. I guess it's comparable to the first one. K is the only thing that divides into both these terms. There's no number factor. Well, I suppose 1 divides into both 1 and 4. But if you factor 1 into something, you're not actually factoring anything out. You're not actually, because it's everything divided by 1 is the same thing. So we can factor a k out. They both have powers of k, and again, k to the first is the lowest of the common powers. So we factor a k out, and we get what's in here by dividing this by k. So k squared divided by k would be just k. 2 minus 1 is 1 here, so we put a k here. And then 4k divided by that common factor of k. The k's divide out, or k divided by k is 1, so we just have a plus 4 in the end, so we put a plus 4 here, close the bracket. So that is the common factored form, or the factored form. We check by expanding this out. We should get this. So k plus 4, k times k is k squared, k times 4 is a plus 4k. And that is exactly the same as what we started with. Number 6 here, the 4x squared minus 14x plus 12. So now there aren't x's in all the terms. There's no x here. There's x here and x squared, but there's no x here. So the common factor is just a number. What number divides evenly into all these terms? Well, it's just 2. Okay, so we can factor a 2 out. So we get what's in here by dividing all 3 of these by 2. So that's what this is. So 4x squared divided by 2, 2 goes into 4 twice, and then there'd just still be an x squared with that 2, because there's no x's to divide out in the denominator here. So we put a 2x squared here. Negative 14x divided by 2 would be a minus 7x, because negative 14 divided by 2 is negative 7. No x's divide out, so we put a minus 7x here. And 12 divided by 2 is 6, so we put a plus 6 here, close the bracket. So that is the factored form. We check by expanding this out. So there, I'll write that down. So 2 times 2x squared is 4x squared. 2 times negative 7x is minus 14x. And 2 times 6 is 12. Same as what we started with. So that is the correct factored form. Question number 7. 15n squared plus 25n minus 10. So again, there's no n here. There's only n's in these terms, so the common factor won't have an n in it. So what number divides evenly into all three of these numbers? And that would be 5. 5 goes into all three of these. So a common factor is going to be a 5. So we get what's in here by dividing all of this by 5. So 15n squared divided by 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3. And it would just be n squared because there's no n being divided out, so the power and the n would stay the same. So we put a 3n squared here. And 25n divided by 5 would be, because 25 divided by 5 is 5, and there's still an n here, so plus 5n. And negative 10 divided by 5 is minus 2, so we put a minus 2 here, close the brackets. And we check by expanding this out. So 5 times 3n squared is 15n squared. 5 times 5n is a plus 25n, and 5 times negative 2 is minus 10. And notice that is exactly the same as what we started with. Number 8, we have negative 8p squared plus 12p minus 28. There's only p's in the first two terms, so the common factor does not have a p in it because there's no p to factor out of the number on the end. But so what number divides into all three of these numbers? They're all even, so 2 could. But remember, there's a negative at the beginning here, so let's factor a negative out. Bigger than negative 2, though, or a larger number than the 2 part, is 4. 4 goes into 8, 12, and 28. So we can factor a negative 4 out. That would be our common factor. So we're going to divide all this by negative 4 to figure out what goes in the brackets here. So negative 8 divided by negative 4 is 2, and it would just be p squared because there's no p to be divided out. So put a 2p squared here. And negative 12p divided by negative 4, negative 12 divided by negative 4 is minus 3, and it'd be, again, same power of p, so minus 3p. And negative 28 divided by negative 4 is plus 7, so we put a plus 7 here and close our brackets. So that is the correct factored form. We can check it by expanding this out. So negative 4 times the 2p squared would be negative 8p squared. And negative 4 times negative 3p would be plus a 12p. Remember, negative times negative is positive 12 here. And negative 4 times 7 would be minus 28, same as what we had up here exactly. So that is the correct factored form. Now what I did between 8 and 9 was I increased the power of the p by 1 for each of these. So the p squared became a p cubed, the p became a p squared, and the negative 28 became a negative 28p. So now we have powers of p in all of this, and so we can still factor, of course, the negative 4 out because the numbers are the same, but the lowest common power of all the p's is 1, so we can factor negative 4p out. So to get what's in here, we divide all this by negative 4p. So negative 8 divided by negative 4 is positive 2, and p cubed divided by p to the first. 3 minus 1 is 2, so this would be a 2p squared. And then negative 12p squared divided by our common factor of negative 4p. So 12 divided by negative 4 is negative 3, and p squared divided by p to the first, 2 minus 1 would be a 1, so we get p to the first there. And negative 28p divided by negative 4p. Negative 28 divided by negative 4 is plus 7. Oh, I forgot to write my negative 3 here. Is a plus 7, and the p is p divided by p is p to the 0, so there's no p's here, so we put a plus 7 in the end and close the brackets. We check by expanding this out. So we'll write this down here for our check. And so negative 4p times 2p squared would be a negative 8p cubed. Negative 4p times negative 3p would be a plus 12p squared. And negative 4p times 7, negative 4 times 7 is negative 28, and we have a single p in that product, so there's a p after that negative 28. Last one on number 10. So numbers 20, negative 10, and 30, you could divide 2 into those. You could divide 5 into those. You could actually divide 10 into all those. So the common factor has a 10 in it, and there's powers of x in all parts. Now you might have started wondering when I got to a power bigger than 1. So here's that case here. We got a power of 4, 3, and 2. So 2 is the lowest common factor power of all the powers of x. So our common factor would be 10x squared. We can factor out of all the terms. So we get what's in here by dividing all this by 10x squared. So 20x to the fourth divided by 10x squared. 20 divided by 10 is 2. And it's x squared because 4 minus 2 is 2. So we put our 2x squared here. Negative 10x cubed divided by 10x squared. Now negative 10 divided by negative 10 is a minus 1. And x cubed divided by x squared, we subtract the exponents. So 3 minus 2 would be a 1. So just a minus x here. And on the very end, 30 divided by 10 is 3. X squared divided by x squared, 2 minus 2 is 0, so there's no x's, so there's just a plus 3 here. And of course we close the brackets. And finally, we check the factoring by expanding this out. We should end up with what we started. So we'll write this down. So 10x squared divided by, times 2x squared would be 20, because 10 times 2 is 20, and 2 and 2 add to 4, so x to the fourth. 10x squared times negative x, so 10 times negative 1 is negative 10, 2, and the 1 here add to 3, and 10x squared times 3 would be a 30x squared, and this, for the 10th time, is the same as what we started with. And that's the end of the tutorial.